I've worked my whole life with plants, both indoor and outdoor plants, and I hear some of the same questions over and over and over again, almost every single day. So I want to bring up what those questions are for indoor plants with you, so that way when you come in here to Rogers Gardens, you have all the answers you need and you can pick your plant and go. So let's go over some of those. I'm Sarah Smith. I'm a horticulturist here at Rogers Gardens, and let's talk houseplants and common questions. So there's two major questions I get asked all the time, and one of them is about watering. So how do I water my houseplant? And there's some really simple tricks that make it really easy, and don't overthink it. So many people kill their plants with kindness, they overwater them, or they don't understand that the pot that they're in. So let's kind of break that down. So the first thing to remember about houseplants is they're just like any other plants. They do have seasons, amazingly enough. Very mild seasons because they're in our house, and our houses are pretty temperature controlled. But you want to slow down on watering a little bit in the winter time, just like you would with a regular plant. So you're going to water a little bit more in the spring, in the summer, in the fall, and you're going to slow down in the winter. And don't panic when your plant doesn't look great in the winter time. That is natural. You're not going to see a lot of new growth. You really will see most of your new growth in the springtime, but don't worry if your plant is not looking its best in the wintertime. So slow down a little bit on your watering in the winter. Each plant needs different kind of water, so you have to think about what plants you have. Do your plants have really big, thick, strappy leaves? That means it doesn't need very much water. Does your plant have really fine little textured leaves? That means it needs a lot more water. So we need to understand the plant that we have, and we want to try to mimic what it gets in nature in our house. We are not going to turn our house into a greenhouse. That's just not going to happen. That's not going to be comfortable for you. But you want to make sure that you're giving it the best you can to be in the house. That's going to be, how much light does my plant get? What kind of temperature do I keep my house at? Are you running a heater or a fan all the time? That's going to mean it needs more water. That's just a natural thing that's going to happen. So depending on the moisture levels in your air, that's definitely going to determine it. One of the best things you can do is get a moisture meter. We have a lot of different kinds of moisture meters here at Rogers that kind of takes the guess out of it. So that way it's sort of a no-brainer. Stick that moisture meter in. That way you know, is it super dry or is it really wet? That way you don't have to stick your fingers in there. If you don't mind getting your hands dirty, poke your finger in there, feel it. Does it feel wet? Don't water it. Does it feel dry? It needs some water. Also, picking up your pot. Does it feel heavy? This one actually feels pretty heavy. Water weighs a lot. This does not need water. I can just feel from the surface that it's very wet. So that's a great way to know. I will tell you another kind of interesting secret. About 80% of my plants, not all of them, are all kind of on the same schedule for watering. They do not have a calendar. They do not know what time of year it is, or what the date is, or the time of day even, really. But they typically need water around the same time. I have a couple of plants like my sansevierias that don't. I have a couple of plants that need a lot more water in between, so I have to watch them and understand what's going on with them. But the secret to success is I really kind of am on a bit of a watering schedule. It changes and fluctuates. Don't be so black and white about it. There's a lot of gray area. But you can typically go around your house and water most of your plants at the same time, which makes it really convenient for you if you have a lot of plants. So figure out kind of what your schedule is for something like that, because you can water most of your plants around the same time. The other question I get kind of along the lines of watering is, should I be misting my plants? And the simple answer to that, and the quick answer to that, is no. Stop misting your plants. There's a little bit more involved to that though. It depends on why you're misting your plants. If you're misting your plants to clean the leaves, yes, get the dust off those leaves. The plants are going to be a lot happier. Your house is going to be a lot cleaner. If you're trying to mist your plants to water your plants, that is simply not enough water for your plants. You have to water through the soil so the water comes out the bottom of the pot. You do not want to replace that with misting. It doesn't really help raise the humidity. For a quick second it does, but not long enough to make the plants super happy. There are other things that will like the mist, things like aerial roots. You'll get a lot of aerial roots on things like these beautiful monsteras. The aerial roots will take in some of the water. You do not have to mist them, because what happens is if you get your plants wet all the time, they do not like that on their leaves. You're going to create a lot of water spots. You're going to create a lot of fungal problems. You might rot it out from having water sit on the leaves too long. So don't go around misting your plants willy-nilly all the time, because they're not going to really like that. Some of the other things that do like some of the misting are things like staghorns and things like air plants. They actually take water in through their leaves, so it's totally fine for them. So understand what you're spraying down with that water before you start going around and spraying all your plants down with water, because most of them do not like that. So really take that into consideration. I don't mist anything in my house. The only thing I mist are my staghorns that I have outside and my air plants that I also have outside, but I've had some inside. You can even dunk them in water. That makes it even easier. So if you don't have a mister, don't worry. Just dunk that whole thing in water. It'll be happy. Stage it wherever you have in your house. That's all they need. Super simple. The other question I get a lot is, how much light does my houseplant need? It does need some real true sunlight. No houseplant is going to be happy in a completely dark room. We do have really beautiful faux plants that you can use for that, and some of them are super convincing, so don't poo-poo that idea. It will absolutely pull off the look that you're trying to go for. But houseplants do need some kind of true sunlight. You can get away with using different lights and stuff that are artificial if you want to really go down that rabbit hole. But if you want to just have something natural in your house, make sure they're getting some true sunlight. South-facing windows can be very intense. The sun is going to be in that window all the time. Your really sun-loving plants will be happy there, but maybe pull them away from the window a little bit so they don't get sunburned, especially in the summertime, or have a thin curtain closed. Will help diffuse the light a little bit. You can get away with having your plants pretty far back in a room if that room has a lot of south-facing light. If you don't know which way is south, pull out the compass on your phone so that way you know what you're dealing with. East and west facing windows are pretty good for plants as well, because they will get some direct sunlight either in the morning or in the afternoon. So you need to have your plant a little closer to the window in a room like that, because it's not going to be full sun all day long, but that will work really well. Again, even with those windows, especially in the summertime, make sure they're not right up against the window, because it can create sunburning and you will start to see a little bit of orangeness or brownness to the leaf, usually in the middle of the leaf. That's how you know you've sunburned it. You never need to put your plants outside in the full sun. I see so many people doing that. They go, oh, I take my plant out, like they're taking their plant for a walk. That plant is not used to being in full sun and you can burn it. So be very, very careful doing that. I wouldn't even do it at all. I never do it with my house plants and they're all totally happy. North facing windows are okay. You want to make sure your plant's a little bit closer for that, because it's going to get less sunlight. If you have a great room where you have windows on different sides of the room, your plant will probably be pretty happy. They do not like blackout curtains in the middle of the day, so make sure you're always pulling your curtains open if you have a tendency to close them at nighttime, so that way they'll get some sunlight, because they won't be happy with that. So if you keep these things into consideration, you'll keep your plant really happy with your sunlight. If your room is so dark that you cannot read a magazine or a book comfortably without turning on a light, your room is too dark for a plant. That's where you really should think about investing in some kind of good looking artificial plants. Like I said, they're getting really nice, and sometimes I can't even tell until I get up close. So don't dismiss that idea if you want to put something in there that makes your room feel a little bit more lively. The next question I get all the time is, how do I repot my houseplants? Especially when someone goes, oh look, I got this beautiful new plant. How am I supposed to replant this? It's super easy. Ta-da! That's all you need to do. Most plants, when you first buy them, do not need to be replanted when they're a house plant. I have a pothos that I've had in my life for about 18 years, and I've never once put it into a larger container. I have added a little bit of soil underneath the roots because it's lost some over time, but it doesn't need to be in a bigger container. Very rarely are you going to need to actually bump your houseplants up into a larger size. Sometimes you will, but not often. So if your plant is in a grower's container, it has holes in it, and your decorative pot does not have holes, it's perfect, because you just pop it right out, put it in the sink, the bathtub, wherever you're watering your plants, water it, let it drain, pop it right back in. The water will not drip out onto any of your furniture. Perfect, easy peasy. If you have a house plant that is starting to get a little root bound, which can sometimes happen. The way you'll know is that it becomes really difficult for it to retain water. It dries out really quickly, or it's way too big looking for the top of the plant versus the bottom of the plant. That's when you're gonna have to repot it. And there are some tips and tricks on how to do that correctly, and I'll tell you right now. Let's say that this plant has become very root bound. It's not, it's a brand new plant. It's really happy in this pot. Could probably stay in this pot for quite a few years before you need to repot it. But if it has become root bound and you have something about this size, you do not wanna go up into an incredibly large container. You really only wanna bump it up into the next size container, something like this. If you plant it in a container that's too big, it will hold too much water and it'll be very difficult to keep the plant happy. So you only want to jump up one size when you're replanting your house plants. It'll make it a lot easier on you. Your plant's going to be a lot happier in something like that. Very often I see people take a little tiny pot like this and put it into something gargantuan, and the plant really struggles with that because the water is getting displaced in the soil at weird amounts because the root ball is very tight, the surrounding soil is very loose. Make sure you're using a really good quality potting soil for your houseplant as well, something that's going to drain well. You want to kind of mimic the type of soil that it's already in. So if it's in really rocky soil, make sure you're not planting it in really peaty soil that has a lot of peat moss in it, which is going to hold a lot of water. Same thing goes for if it's really peat mossy, don't plant it in really rocky soil because it's going to drain too fast. Always be aware when you're repotting it into another size like this, your watering is going to change. So really watch it and make sure you're not over or under watering it once you replant it. The other question I get a lot is, should I be feeding my houseplants? And of course you should be feeding your houseplants. Just like your outdoor plants need to be fertilized, your indoor plants need to be fertilized too. We carry a lot of really great organic fertilizers here at Rogers Gardens because we are 100% organic. And they're ones that you just mix with the water and pour it right in. Super, super easy. They're nice because it is an organic thing. You don't have to worry about any kind of weird synthetics in your house or things that you can have reactions to or that your pets can have reactions to. Make sure you read the back of the bottle. Don't just guesstimate it. Don't just wing it, because you can over fertilize your houseplants, or if you're under fertilizing your houseplants, what a waste of fertilizer. It's not doing anything. So make sure you fully read the back of the bottle for the instructions on how often to do it. Always aim for a little bit less than too much, because you don't want to create too much minerals and salts into the soil. That's when you get little black tips on the end of your plants. So always go for less versus more, but make sure you understand what you're supposed to be doing and how often you're supposed to be doing it, because each fertilizer is going to have different instructions. Follow the instructions for that specific one. Always read the back of your bottle. The last thing is, help, I have a bug. What do I do if I have bugs on my plants? We can always help you ID them here at Rogers. Bring them in a little sealed Ziploc baggie so we don't spread the bugs all over the place. We really appreciate that. We can help you ID it. But most of the time, the bugs that you have on your houseplants are really simple to get rid of, and that's either by using an insecticidal soap, or we have some really great sprays that have a light bit of neem oil in this. I do like neem oil on my houseplants because it actually makes them a little bit shiny. Same thing with the insecticidal soap. I don't like to use neem oil outside typically because plants can burn, but this is a really great product for helping with kind of bugs. Also, washing your plants down. Your plants need to be washed down every once in a while. Sometimes I put all my plants in the shower, turn the shower on, they have a shower party, I clean them off, they're nice, they're not dusty anymore, and I'm knocking off any of the soft body bugs that could build up on my plants. Using things like Leaf Glow, where you're actually spraying your plants to clean them down, will help too, because that gets you a little more connected with your plants. You'll notice if there's little bugs starting to start there. The more you look at them, the more you fuss with them, the quicker you're gonna find those problems so they don't explode, and by the time you realize it, it's completely out of control. So hopefully that covers some of the questions you may have about having houseplants in your house. We have tons of videos, so if you have a more specific question, I guarantee we have a video all about that. You can always ask your questions down in the comment too, so we know what kind of video you want to see next here at Rogers. Make sure you subscribe to our YouTube page so that way you see all the new things that we have going on. We're constantly uploading videos. Our Facebook and Instagram page is a great plethora of information, beautiful photos. We let you know about the events we have going on here at Rogers Gardens so you don't miss out or come in too late, and something you really want is sold out because you weren't paying attention to how quickly we put those things out and how fast product can move here sometimes at Rogers Gardens. We also have a really fantastic email list that you can put yourself on. If you go to our website, you can do online shopping there. Sign up for that email list because we'll send you out all kinds of great information. It's really beautifully put together. People really enjoy it, and it's a great bit of information there for you as well. So thank you so much for tuning in. Be well, be safe, and happy gardening, everybody.